Hey everybody, it's Gordon Majak here, back with another episode of Timeless Pop, Rock, and Soul. And in our last video there, we featured the great Tina Turner singing that song that sort of sparked her career turnaround, sparked her comeback there in the early 1980s. And that was, of course, her great cover version of that old Al Green chestnut, Let's Stay Together. How about that? What a great job by Tina Turner on that song, and all that good mojo in that song helped turn everything around for Tina. So that's pretty cool. Well, how about Al Green? Let's talk about Al Green and let's talk about Let's Stay Together. Now, Let's Stay Together, of course, we go back to the beginning there when Al Green first had his big breakthrough. His big breakthrough hit there was Tired of Being Alone. That was from July of 1971. That was a number 11 pop hit and a number 7 R&B hit. So the highest charting song so far there in Al Green's career. He follows that up a few months later there in December of 1971 with his original version of Let's Stay Together. And of course, that immediately went to number 1 pop, number 1 R&B, just an absolute across-the-board smash, instant signature song for Al Green, instant top 10 of the decade song for Al Green in any genre of music there in 1971 for Let's Stay Together. And that is where we pick up the story. We are going to start in early 1972. Al Green's last big hit was Let's Stay Together. What is he going to put out next? Well, I'm going to show you the album. Now here we go. We talk about iconic album covers, right? And this is one of those iconic album covers, just like so many of Marvin Gaye's album covers and so many of Stevie Wonder's album covers. This is just one of those great R&B album covers from the 70s that's just instantly recognizable and just brings to mind so much incredible music. This is our album there from 1972. It is the good Reverend himself, Mr. Al Green, and his album, I'm Still in Love with You. What a song and what an album. Now, this is the album that our song eventually wound up on, the song that we're going to do here in a second. But the song that we're going to do actually preceded the album by several months. And so here's a look at our single version here. There's Al looking like a boss, like always. And our song is Look What You Done For Me. And there is Al Green's follow-up to Let's Stay Together just a few months later. And now Al Green is off and running there in 1972. He starts laying down a string of classic, memorable hit songs, and he's creating a greatest hits album as he goes along here. Tired of Being Alone, as I said, his big breakthrough there in 71. Then it was Let's Stay Together. Now we're talking about Look What You Done For Me, our song here, number 4 pop, number 2 R&B. He's going to follow this one up in a few months with the title track of that album, I'm Still in Love with You. That's going to be a number 3 pop hit and a number 1 R&B hit. He's going to follow that up a few months later. We're still in 1972, folks. Al Green is doing work here in the early 70s. He's going to follow up I'm Still in Love with You with another song called You Ought to Be With Me. There's one of my favorite Al Green tunes. That one's also going to go to number 3 pop and number 1 R&B. He's just laying down a greatest hits album. Early 1973, how about the epic Al Green track, Call Me? Remember that one? There's a classic. Top 10 pop hit, number 2 R&B hit. Then he follows that up with Here I Am, Come and Take Me. That's the summer of 73. Another top 10 pop hit, another top 10 R&B hit. Finally, you've got in 1974 there, Sha La La. Al Green, there's a number 7 pop hit and a number 2 R&B hit, and he's not even done yet. He's just creating a greatest hits album as he goes along there in the early and mid 70s. So Al Green just on an incredible roll. And that's where we get this song, Look What You Done For Me. And we get all of the classic Al Green elements in this song. And that means we've got a great composition right out of the gate, written by Al Green himself, of course, with his partners there, the great Willie Mitchell, who's the producer of this track as well. And then we've got the legend back there, Al Jackson Jr., of course, the original drummer and one of the founders of the Booker T and the MGs, right there at the genesis of the Memphis soul sound. So at the genesis of the Al Green sound, the signature Al Green sound that we all know and love, you get songs that are written by those three gentlemen. You get these great horn arrangements with the Memphis horns, just always so funky and soulful, these brass arrangements on the Al Green songs. And the track is just going to be as laid back and nasty and filthy and funky as you could ever want it to be. And on top of all of that, you get the great vocals of Al Green. Now, I always loved Al Green, going all the way back there to when I was a teenager. I was a teenager when he had his big hit there with Let's Stay Together, of course. So I had instant recognition of Al Green there in the early 70s. And I always loved him, and I followed him all through the decade. I had his records. Every time he came out with another new song on the radio, I was just thrilled. I loved me some Al Green, and I always respected Al Green. But then many, many, many years later, and I'm talking about now like the early 2000s, Al Green was doing a sort of pop R&B comeback thing there in the early 2000s. This is about 15 years ago. And I think he had an album out at that time called I Can't Stop, if that sounds familiar. And for a while there, Al Green went out and was touring. And I got tickets to go see Al Green, and I was very fortunate to be very close to the stage, right down like in the 4th or 5th row from the stage. Great seats to see Al Green at the Paramount Theater there in Seattle. And I have to say, always loved Al Green, huge fan, was not prepared for just how great this brother actually is. If you would have asked me before the show, what did I think of Al Green, I would have said, oh man, he's one of the great R&B singers, one of my favorite artists, one of the greats, right? Well, after the show, if you would have asked me that same question now, I would tell you he's one of the greats, and certainly one of my favorites, and definitely one of the all-time top 5 concerts I ever saw in my life. Al Green. And here's 2 things you need to know about Al Green in concert back in the day when I saw him there 15 years ago. As a musician and as a band leader, he is the consummate band leader. I can't think of anybody other than maybe James Brown or Prince, somebody like that I have seen that had such absolute command and control over his great band in concert there. And of course, he had his buddy Teeny Hodges there on guitar, and the Memphis horns back there on the horns, the gals doing the background vocals. Really just a funky, soulful little band there. And Al had those guys on a string, man. He was conducting that band with his backhand there, and just had those guys moving up and down and in and out and back and forth, and louder and softer and moving here and moving there. And he had those guys just in such great command as the front man and as the lead vocalist there. The second thing you need to know about Al Green is, if that first part wasn't impressive enough, man, that band was following him everywhere on a dime. Very impressive. The other thing you need to know about Al Green live is I was not prepared. I always knew the brother could sing. Are you kidding me? Al Green, come on. We're talking about one of the iconic soul vocalists, right? Who didn't know already that Al Green was a great singer? I knew that. But I was not prepared, I guess, just for, and this is, in his later, well, not later years, but certainly, we're talking 30 years after his 70s heyday, right? So he's an older man. He's not the young pup he was back there in the 70s. So we're talking about an older version of Al Green, but what I saw in concert was a singer whose voice had aged so beautifully, and a singer who had taken such good care of his voice, and a singer who just is operating at such a masterful level that even I did not fully appreciate it before I got to see him live. And when I saw him live, it was just so immediately apparent that Al Green's records, as fantastic and iconic and legendary as they are, and they are rightfully so, his records do not do him justice as a singer. You have to see Al Green really cut it loose live. And when I did, like I say, I went from loving him to thinking, you know what? This guy's got to be up there on my Mount Rushmore of soul singers. I mean, I've already got a couple spots. If I have 5 spots up there, I've already got a couple spoken for with Ray Charles and Sam Cooke. And I'm sorry, I got to put Al Green up there in the number 3 spot. And that means I only have 2 spots left. And that's about what my opinion did of Al Green when I saw him perform live there. Just an unbelievable showman. He had... this is the scene at the Al Green concert. On one hand, his backhand there to the band, he's got the band just dialed in. They're just starting and stopping and doing everything he wants on command, on a dime. And with the other hand, I don't know how he managed to hold the microphone and sing and do everything he needed to do in the concert. But the other hand, he was working the crowd. And that balance and that dynamic between him working his band every second of every song and working the crowd, and of course the vocal, like I said, just unbelievable. One of the all-time. I was trying to think this afternoon, what are some of the greatest live vocal performances I have ever seen? And I've seen so many dozens of concerts. Yeah, and Al Green, hands down, not even any question about it, one of the best live vocal performances that I was ever lucky enough to see. I couldn't wait to see him, man. I was a huge fan going in the door. I came out the door of the show going, are you effing kidding me? The Reverend Al Green. Look what you done for me. Listen to this brother. Come on. Those Memphis horns, man, those lines short, sweet, and punchy, and they just sizzle. The edge on those horns, they just sizzle in your ears. I love that. It adds so much attitude to these songs, and of course, as if Al Green's not bringing enough attitude with this great vocal. But man, this was always one that I know Let's Stay Together and some of his other big hits, I'm Still in Love with You, got so much attention. But this is always one of those Al Green hits that I just love these horns and love the way he plays off these horns in the rhythm chart. It's just such a great chart.
Sometimes I want to leave, and then I say it wouldn't make sense at all anyway.
Yeah, how about that badass band back there behind Al Green? As I mentioned, the great Teeny Hodges on the rhythm guitar there, and of course, the co writer of the song, famous arranger and producer in his own right, and of course, what a great drummer, and that's Al Jackson Jr. back there on the back line, laying down that greasy, grimy, filthy drum track that just propels this song along so beautifully. And there's Al Green riding right on top of it. In style, as always. Man, I'm looking at the list of these hits, and I know there's another 3 or 4 songs I didn't even put on here. This is just his run of like 10 straight signature soul tunes there in the 70s. Just ridiculous what Al Green was doing. Yeah, and like I say, man, he's up there on my Rushmore now. I only got 2 spots left. I know Mount Rushmore's 4, but I made it 5, so it's a better number. But I only have 2 spots left. I mean, Ray Charles, Sam Cooke, they're not going anywhere. And Al Green, after I saw him from about 15 feet away, unbelievable. If you've ever seen Al Green perform, he does a thing, or he used to do a thing, I should say, in concert. Where in the middle of the show, he would do sort of a little interlude, a little medley section, singing some of the other great songs, other great oldies, soul classics, R&B classics from back in the day that he always liked by other artists. And I think he does like a Four Tops song and maybe an Otis Redding. He sings like Sitting on the Dock of the Bay, that kind of a thing. And he, of course, he had done his cover of the Bee Gees, Beautiful Ballad there, How Can You Mend a Broken Heart? So Al Green, well-versed in cover material, but he's sort of paying tribute to some of the other classic songs from back in the day when he was having his classic songs. And then there's that moment, and I can't remember what comes before it. I don't know if it's a Temptations song or what, but he's going through this medley of other people's classic songs. And then there's that moment where he transitions from one into the next one. And it starts when he looks at the audience, goes, "Today I saw somebody who looked just like you." And I almost had a heart attack there in the 5th row of that concert. Al Green is up there with his kick-ass Memphis band and those singers and the horns and the whole thing, and he busts into a Stylistics song. He does a snippet of the great Stylistics song, "You Are Everything," and I just went, okay, now this brother is like on a whole nother level, as if all the other songs in the medley weren't just ridiculous enough. When he hit that Stylistics, that's when I just thought, man, Reverend Al, he has got a direct line to the Almighty, it would seem, when it comes to his music and his creativity and certainly his singing. What an incredible performer. Easy on my Mount Rushmore of soul singers, no doubt about that. And easy one of the top 5 concerts I ever saw. Al Green threw down for about 2 hours. Audience just eating out of his hand. Band over here just eating out of his hand. Total command. The Reverend Al Green. No joke about that. Coming back with another 70s soul queen. Who could it be? Can't wait to get to this one, man. I have got to use my imagination, and I will.